Hey everyone! Today's lecture is going to be on seizures and patient safety and quality. In this video, we're going to discuss seizures, the different kinds of seizures, and epilepsy. We're also going to discuss interventions of the nurse, such as what to do while your patient is having a seizure, what to do after your patient has a seizure, and some precautions to take if you're caring for a patient who is at risk of having a seizure. So let's jump right in. A seizure is a sudden hyperexcitation and disorderly discharge of neurons in the brain, causing changes in consciousness, sensation, mood, behavior, or thought. Patients who have experienced some kind of neurological injury or metabolic disturbance are at risk for a seizure. Now, there are two main ways seizures can be classified. They can be classified as generalized onset or focal onset. You may also hear seizures be described as motor or non-motor, depending on whether or not muscle movement is involved. Seizures of all kinds are usually treated with medication, diet therapy, or nerve stimulation. Patients who have seizures due to some type of focal scar or lesion in the brain may be qualified for epilepsy surgery. And epilepsy surgery is a procedure in which the part of the brain that is causing the seizures is removed. Now let's discuss the difference between generalized seizures and focal seizures, starting with generalized. Generalized seizures are classified when there are surges of abnormal nerve discharges in the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Now, there are many different causes of generalized seizures, but they're most commonly caused by an imbalance in the inhibitory neurons and excitatory neurons of the brain. There are also different kinds of generalized seizures, such as absence, tonic-clonic, myoclonic, tonic, and atonic. Absent seizures are also known as petit mal seizures. They cause rapid blinking of the eye or a few seconds of staring into space. These seizures usually last from 2 to 30 seconds. Tonic-clonic seizures, formerly known as grand mal seizures, are characterized by a loud cry, a loss of consciousness with falling, tonicity, which is the stiffening of the muscles, clonicity, which is rhythmic jerking of the muscles, and incontinence. Now, tonic-clonic seizures should only last for 2 minutes, but no more than 5. If the seizure does last any longer than 5 minutes, then this indicates a medical emergency called status epilepticus, which we'll discuss more in just a few. Myoclonic seizures consist of sudden body or limb jerks that can involve the arms, head, and neck. When these seizures develop in adolescence along with tonic-clonic seizures, they are a part of a syndrome called juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. Patients with juvenile myoclonic epilepsy are most likely to have these seizures in the morning or within 1 to 2 hours of waking up. In tonic seizures, the muscles tighten and the body stiffens. If the patient is standing, they may fall to the floor. Their neck will extend and their eyes will open wide and roll upwards. Also, arms may raise upwards and the legs may stretch or contract. The patient may let out a cry and have irregular breathing. Tonic seizures usually last 60 seconds. Now, atonic seizures are also called drop attacks because these seizures cause muscles to go limp, making the patient drop to the floor. Now, sometimes the patient may not completely fall, but their knees will sag and their head will drop forward. Either way, this can result in injuries to the head, nose, or face, since our heads are the heaviest thing on our bodies. Atonic seizures are very brief and usually last 2 seconds. There are 3 phases of a tonic-clonic seizure. There is the tonic phase, the clonic phase, and the post-ictal phase. In the tonic phase, the person will usually let out a short, loud cry. This cry doesn't mean that the patient is in pain. As the muscles in the chest contract and as air rushes through the vocal cords, this causes a crying sound. People don't feel pain during a seizure, although their muscles might be sore afterwards. In this phase of the seizure, muscles will stiffen and the individual will fall to the floor. Increased pressure on the bladder and bowel may cause urinary and fecal incontinence. During this phase, the patient loses all consciousness, the back is arched, their eyes roll to the back of their head, and they may have trouble breathing. The patient may also bite their tongue during the tonic phase, which may cause bleeding. During the clonic phase, the extremities will begin to jerk and twitch, saliva may pool in the mouth, and the patient may have dysfunctional breathing. The neck and limbs will rapidly flex and relax, but this will slow down toward the end of the seizure. And just as a patient can only have a tonic seizure, a patient may also just have a clonic seizure and not have the tonic phase. The period after the seizure is referred to as the post-ictal state. During this time, the patient might need to rest. It might be hard to wake them up or get any response from them during this phase. After a seizure, the person may feel fatigue, confusion, and disorientation, which can last from 5 minutes to several hours or even days. And in very rare cases, this disorientation may last up to 2 weeks. The patient may have a headache when they finally regain their consciousness, and a seizure can affect everyone differently, so the condition a patient is in during the post-ictal phase really just depends on the person. Focal seizures are also called partial seizures, and this is because they begin in only one part of the brain. Now, focal seizure activity can spread to the entire brain and turn into complex focal seizures or generalized seizures. As the seizure activity spreads across the brain, the patient may begin to experience more symptoms. If the abnormal electrical activity involves a large area of the brain, the patient can start to feel confused or dazed, or experience mild shaking, stiffening of the muscles, fumbling, or chewing motions. Now let's talk about the different kinds of focal seizures. There are 3 kinds of focal seizures. Simple focal aware seizures affect a small part of the brain. During a simple focal seizure, the patient is aware of what's happening and may experience unusual sensations and movements, such as jerking of the arms or legs on one side of the body, turning the head or eyes to one side. The patient may also experience tingling, numbness, or other unusual feelings on one side of the body. Complex focal seizures can cause a person to become confused or dazed. During this type of seizure activity, the patient won't be able to respond to you up to a few minutes. In complex focal seizures, there is abnormal electrical activity occurring in one lobe of the brain, and these seizures may start off as simple focal seizures. Secondary generalized seizures begin in one part of the brain, but then spread to both hemispheres. And a secondary generalized seizure is the same as the generalized seizures we discussed earlier, but the only difference is that secondary generalized seizures are focal seizures that turned into a generalized seizure. The type of seizure a patient has can depend on how much of the brain has electrical disturbances and what part of the brain has electrical disturbances. And just so you guys are following me here, simple focal seizure activity occurs in one small part of the brain, complex focal seizure activity occurs in one lobe of the brain, and all generalized seizures, whether they start off as a simple focal seizure or not, occur due to seizure activity throughout the entire brain, both the left and right hemispheres. Patients might report something called an aura before they have a seizure. An aura acts as a sign or warning that a seizure is about to occur. This term describes the symptoms a patient experiences before having the seizure. And it sometimes might be hard for someone to describe how an aura feels. At first, the patient may have minor symptoms like a change in feeling or a sense that something is about to happen. Other times, an aura can be a physical, emotional, or sensory change. Most people experience the same feeling each time they have an aura. And an aura actually classifies as a simple focal aware seizure. And this is because even though a patient is conscious during a focal aware seizure, remember these seizures can still develop into another type of seizure, such as a complex focal aware seizure or a generalized seizure. This explains why sometimes a patient may have an aura all by itself and not end up having any other seizure afterwards. A patient may have an aura from several seconds up to 60 minutes before a seizure. And as I said earlier, guys, a seizure can affect every individual differently. Some may experience an aura before having a seizure and some may not. Some auras that a patient may report before having a seizure are visual changes such as hallucinations or bright lights, just to name a few. Hearing voices or sounds that aren't there, such as buzzing, ringing, or drumming noises. Strange tastes or smells that aren't there. Numbness or tingling on one side of the face or body. Feeling separated from the body. A strong sudden feeling of fear, sadness, anger, joy, or anxiety. Dizziness, headache, or nausea. A strange feeling of a wave going through the head. Stiffness or twitching in a certain part of the body, such as the arm or hand. A rising feeling in the stomach. A sensation that an arm or leg feels bigger or smaller than it is. Or a feeling of deja vu, panic, or detachment. And if you're caring for a patient that is at risk of having a seizure, ask them if they experience any auras, and if they do, let them know that if they experience that aura, to communicate it to you immediately. Because again, these auras can possibly develop into a convulsive episode, and we want to take necessary precautions to prevent any injuries. Many factors can put patients at high risk for seizures, and here are just some of those possible causes and triggers. Having an injury or trauma to the brain, medication, withdrawing from alcohol or other drugs, having a fever, having a history of seizure activity also puts a patient at high risk, stressful situations, a specific time of day can trigger a seizure, alcohol consumption or drug use, constipation, caffeine, lack of sleep, hyperventilation, fatigue, low blood sugar, loud noises, being on your menstrual cycle, being pregnant, or anything else that can cause hormonal changes in women, flashing lights, or high sodium levels in the blood. And epilepsy is the most common cause of seizures. And again, these are just some possible triggers and causes. The list goes on. Now, epilepsy is a neurological disorder that is classified by having 2 or more unprovoked seizures. So remember, just because a patient has a seizure, that does not automatically diagnose them with epilepsy. There are many causes of epilepsy, but unfortunately for a lot of people, the cause of their epilepsy is unknown. But here are just some possible causes. A brain injury or damage to the brain can cause epilepsy. This includes head traumas, stroke, brain injury during birth, neurodegenerative diseases, or brain tumors, just to name a few. Epilepsy can begin weeks, months, or years after an injury to the brain. It doesn't always have to be right away. Another cause could be structural abnormalities in the brain that occur during brain development. Genetic factors that cause epilepsy can be inherited or can occur at random due to a genetic mutation. Seizures that last longer than 5 minutes or having more than one seizure within a 5-minute time frame could indicate a medical emergency called status epilepticus. This condition requires intensive monitoring and medical treatment because it can result in brain damage, hypoxia, hypercapnia, pulmonary edema, or metabolic acidosis. So let's just discuss some procedures and tests that can be performed to diagnose a patient with epilepsy. One test is an electroencephalogram, also known as an EEG. This test measures the electrical activity of the brain, or a spinal tap to collect and analyze the patient's spinal fluid. A spinal tap can identify if there is any hemorrhaging around the brain, any cancers that involve the brain or spinal cord, or any infections, bacteria, viruses, or inflammatory conditions of the nervous system. Then there are also imaging tests such as a MRI or CAT scan. These imaging tests can identify if the patient has any abnormalities or lesions in the brain that could be causing their epilepsy or seizures. Blood tests can also be performed to diagnose epilepsy or cancel out other potential disorders and causes, such as tests of the liver and kidney function, blood sugar tests, a complete blood count, or tests to diagnose or cancel out any infectious diseases. Now let's talk about your role as a nurse before, during, and after your patient has a seizure. Seizure precautions include all nursing interventions to 1. Protect the patient from traumatic injuries, 2. Position them for adequate ventilation, 3. Position them for drainage of oral secretions, and 4. Provide privacy, support, and education after the seizure. So here are some of those precautions you're going to want to implement when caring for a patient who's at risk of having a seizure. You're going to want to reduce any environmental stimuli that may trigger a seizure. Keep the patient's bed in the lowest position possible to avoid falls. And when a patient is having a seizure, remember they have no control over their movements. So all 4 bed railings should be up and padded to protect them from injuries. Suction must be set up and working properly to be able to drain out any saliva, blood, or vomit the patient may secrete during a seizure. Now remember that seizures can cause changes in heart rate and respiration. This is because patients may stop breathing at the beginning of a convulsive seizure as their respiratory muscles contract. This increases oxygen demand and strains the cardiovascular system. For this reason, you should always keep a bag valve mask at the patient's bedside. Be sure to test all the equipment you've set up to make sure all supplies are working properly when they're placed at the patient's bedside. And this test should actually be repeated at every shift change. Now let's discuss some tips on how to protect your patient during a tonic-clonic seizure. When the seizure begins, note the time and don't leave the patient's side. Track the duration of the seizure, and remember that if a seizure lasts over 5 minutes, or if the patient has had more than one seizure within a 5-minute time frame, this is a medical emergency. If the patient is standing or sitting, safely and gently guide them to the floor. Protect their head from injuries by either cradling their head in your lap or by placing a pad under their head. Do not lift the patient up from the floor to the bed while the seizure is occurring. Clear the surrounding area of any furniture. If your patient is having a seizure in the bed, lift the bed railings, remove the pillows, and place the bed in the lowest position. Now remember, if this is a patient who is already at risk for a seizure, the rails of the bed should already be up and padded, and the bed should already be lowered to avoid injuries. But in the event that the seizure occurs unexpectedly, you should do that immediately. If possible, turn the patient onto their side and slightly tilt their head forward. This will prevent blockage of the airway and will prevent them from aspirating any oral secretions. Do not restrain the patient during a seizure. If their limbs begin to swing, you may loosely hold them in place. If the patient is wearing glasses, you should take them off and loosen any tight clothing. This includes collars and belts. Under no circumstances should you force apart a patient's clenched teeth. Do not place any objects into the patient's mouth or airway during a seizure. This includes fingers, medicine, and tongue depressors. Now, you may insert a bite block or oral airway in advance if you notice the possibility of a tonic-clonic seizure. When the seizure is over, you're going to want to reassure and reorient the patient as they regain consciousness. Speak to them calmly and assist them to a bed in a comfortable position. Again, make sure the side rails are up and make sure the bed is in its lowest position. And this really isn't mandatory, but if your patient is incontinent during a tonic-clonic seizure, I would suggest covering up the area of incontinence just to avoid embarrassment and protect the patient's integrity. After the seizure has ended, suction may be needed to remove excess saliva, blood, or vomit from the patient's mouth. Then evaluate the patient from head to toe. Inspect their oral cavity for breaks in mucous membranes. Inspect for broken teeth. Check their skin for bruises and their bones and joints for any injuries. Also, assess the patient's blood glucose level, vital signs, and oxygen saturation. If your patient has experienced an interruption in breathing during the seizure, then you should administer supplemental oxygen. If your patient is awake, assess their motor strength, orientation, memory, and speech. And as soon as you finish the assessment, let your patient get some rest. Seizures can be very upsetting to witness, so provide emotional support to the patient and their family. Also monitor drug levels. A lot of times patients experience seizures because they're not complying with their seizure medication. Reevaluate any meds that might make the patient more susceptible to having a seizure, such as antidepressants, antibiotics, or narcotics. If the benefit of the medication isn't worth the risk, see if there is another alternative of medication available that doesn't put the patient at high risk of seizures. Be sure to document all objective data, subjective data, and changes you collected before, during, and after the seizure, and immediately notify the patient's healthcare provider. When discharging a patient who has had a seizure or is epileptic, you should educate the patient and their family on at-home seizure safety. Explain to them the side effects of any newly prescribed medication. If the patient is prescribed rescue medication, educate them on the side effects and how to administer it. Instruct your patient to avoid alcohol while on seizure medication. Alcohol alters the way the seizure medication works in the body and can actually increase the risk of seizures. If the patient has a seizure at home, let the patient and their family know they should call 911 if the person has repeated seizures within a 5-minute time frame, or the seizure lasts more than 5 minutes, if they fall or hit their head, if they're having trouble breathing or if they aren't breathing after the seizure, if he or she has a known heart condition, if the person is injured, pregnant, diabetic, or sick, if he or she does not return to their normal condition, or if the seizure occurs in water. Alright, ladies and gents, that's the end of our video on seizures and patient safety and quality. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to never give up.